Hi, everyone. Right, let's wait 1 more minute and we can start. We're likely not going to see a lot of Splunkers joining because most are out today. Yeah, let's give it 1 more minute and we can start. Okay, let's start. Eric, I think you have the first item. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yep. Sorry, I had my volume down.
Yeah, can you, I think you have the first item, right?
Sorry, everyone's just staring at me like, oh, my bad. Yeah, I just had a quick, this probably belongs in Slack. Do we collect some of the, I noticed there was like a report around like sort of maybe like goals for observability for the collector, like some metrics. Is there a path right now to collect some of these specifically like incoming connections per receiver? Or is that just sort of, is that more of a roadmap document?
It's a roadmap document. I don't think we collect the number of connections or most of the items in that document.
Yeah,
we don't.
No worries. Cool. Yeah, I've seen some, I'll probably file some issues soon. I've seen some stuff that is maybe getting attributed to an exporter when it might be related to like resource starvation by a receiver, but it's hard, you know. Anyway, Okay, that's helpful though. Just was double checking that I wasn't missing anything. Thank you.
Yeah, it's more of a vision type of a document. It's not a description of what exists today. If it's not clear, maybe we just make it. We just need to edit the document so that there is no confusion around what exists and what doesn't.
Cool. Is there any I know the health check endpoint doesn't emit any like metrics like that. Is there any current reporting tools that cover any of this? Not necessarily the per connection stats, but
we do reports, right? Some metrics. The components do report metrics, like the number of items they receive or drop. So some of the things that are on this list, they do exist today, but many others don't.
Okay.
So they are exposed. Some of those, the things that say that we want to be observed, they are currently exposed as collectors' own metrics. The components expose them.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. I'll use those metrics to see what I can reproduce or document. All right, thank you.
Okay, next item, Tianduo Hao, are you in the call?
Yeah. Hi, yeah, I have a question about how to use packaging in the internal folder, and as we want to add one of the AWS ECS health check extension to the contrib repo, and but we need to use one of the class located in the ops report config, which is in the internal folder of the OpenTelemetry collector, and but we cannot directly use it. So I just want to know if I can ask to move it outside of the internal folder, or I need to rewrite a lot of the same code of the report config.
Yeah, so we moved it to internal intentionally so that we minimize the APIs that we expose, the public APIs.
Yeah.
If you need something from there, then if you can maybe specifically open an issue which says what exactly you need,
okay,
we probably won't be able to just do a blanket exception and move everything to be publicly exported there. But maybe if you need something specifically from there, maybe we can do just that, right? So it actually depends on what exactly you need. What's the purpose? What would you like to do? But then the alternate is, yes, if you can maybe re-implement that. If it's a small thing and you can just re-implement, that's also an option, right? If you don't want to wait for that. But yeah, we can have a look at the specific request. If you want, if there is an API that is currently hidden, it's internal, and you want it to be open, then please file a specific request just for that, right? We're not going to be able to move the entirety of observer report package related stuff from internal to make it all of it public, because we spend a lot of effort to actually clean up the public API and remove the stuff that we don't want to expose. So we don't want to now undo all that effort.
Okay, got it. Yeah. We just need to use one of the class ops metrics in that ops config. So yeah, sure. I will create another request for this to get this access. Yeah,
please do that, and then we can have a specific discussion around that. Right?
Okay, sure. Thanks.
All right, Punya, you're next.
Sorry, I got stuck finding my mute button. Apologies. So super exciting. We have a bunch of discussions left over from old PRs. And I just wanted to, actually, is someone's, I can share my screen if you want to quickly glance through them. Is that okay?
Please go ahead. Yep.
Great. And this is probably going to become a recurring feature of these, trying to bring back the spirit of Andrew from wherever outside the OpenTelemetry he may be.
Yeah, Punya, we were discussing this last time, so it's good you're going through it.
So, you know. Awesome. So there's this question on
Can
while
you zoom in a bit? Sorry.
I can, absolutely. How about that?
Great, thank you.
Better? Okay, great. I'm actually going to do something slightly different, see if I can share my window instead of my tab, because I'm going to keep switching tabs. Okay, so we can all see many copies of Tigran's face. Okay. So looks like the last time, the point where this discussion got stuck 2 days ago, looks like it's moved forward since the time we compiled this list. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is in progress. We're making progress.
It's in progress. I'm gonna remove this OAuth and core versus contrib. This is also in progress.
Yep.
16 days ago. So
yeah, I don't think that one moved.
That's done because we have the contrib, I believe, which is now merged. The contrib version of this is now merged, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
okay.
it looks like this is now the issue is closed and it was moved to contrib. This is awesome. Thank you. Auth data as part of the resource. So this is something where we were going to. I think we maybe wanted Urasi to be here for this discussion, but
yeah, we discussed this Punya last week, and Jurasi has been going through that.
Awesome, thank you.
He finished most of the work. We decided that the remainder of the verification needed to just be done later, post GA.
Post GA. So
like post 1.0.
I think I would still prefer for I'm not totally sure that there will not be changes necessary to the public APIs as a result of this. So I would still prefer for Jurasi to go through the proposal that I made, and it's very draft, and have his opinion as well on it. It does require changes to the API, which are additive, so they are backwards compatible. But in case what I'm suggesting is not a good solution, we may need to do something differently, which then may be a breaking change. I would like that confirmation. I would like at least one more opinion that this looks good as a proposal. And in that case, we will be good because it's an additive change, non-breaking change.
So just to confirm that, getting that sign off is a GA blocker, right?
I think, yes, we should at least confirm that this proposal for the pass-through of the authentication is good enough. And in that case, we're good because it's a non-breaking change. We can do it after the GA. I want to make sure we're clear here, right? So otherwise, if it's not what we want to do something else, then that something else is unclear. In that case, I don't know what exactly is it, right? And that may require some changes there. I don't think Jurasi is in the call, right? They know.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah.
So yeah, let's because he's the most familiar with the topic. I would like his opinion on this as well.
Okay. I've made a note here, and I might comment on the bug afterwards. But we'll
yeah,
find
let's add it to the bug because it did get moved to post release.
And Okay. Hopefully that captured what was going on. Now then there's also this issue of issues or PRs that are repeatedly marked stale and brought back like zombies. So let's just see if we can find new owners for some of them. So this one, it's closed as inactive, but I think Bogdan brought it back several times. I'm curious if there's value in doing this, or if anybody else wants to pick it up.
I'm not familiar with this PR, so I don't know.
Okay, then I will.
I think Punya, it can always be reopened if there's an interest,
Of
right?
course.
If there isn't breaking, I mean, if there's a change needed.
Yeah, so totally agree. Can see if, so this one's still open. It's been reopened many times. So yeah, I think it's been like reopened 7 or 8 times. I'm just trying to understand, can we let it die, or does someone actually want to make it happen? I think the original contributor is no longer around. So keeping on reopening it will not help.
Yep.
I think it's a valuable addition, but I don't think it's critical in any way. So if anybody wants to pick it up, they are free to do that.
Okay.
If not, then it stays as is.
That's unreasonable. Do you believe that?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, sounds good. I'm addressing Bogdan because he's the one who has been bringing it back. Which I
So,
totally understand.
Punya, I have a question here.
Yeah.
Often, new contributors to the project come and look for issues, right, to work on. And if we could actually instead tag it, and say,
that's a great idea.
Closing it out, then it gives an opportunity for folks to actually make a useful contribution.
I'll make a note of that. So I will add a label here, needs owner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I think that, Tigran, what do you think? Because, often, and I know we haven't done as good a job as we could on tagging good first issues, but hopefully we'll kind of pick that up and be able to tag that.
There is
Yeah,
an
let's try
issue.
it.
There's an issue related to this, by the way. Maybe you can tag that instead of the PR.
Yeah.
So fixes 2548. And this is currently, so I can tag this as a good first issue.
Yeah, cool.
Perfect. Thanks, Yana. And then I will allow, if Bogdan has some reason to, I'll come back and close it myself if Bogdan doesn't reply in a short while. Last of these, rename action in processor helper. This is closed now, so maybe there's nothing more to do. Looks like John Woo closed it himself. So I don't know if he got fed up or if it is no longer a good idea.
No, I think John worked on a different PR and then this got closed.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for, thank you. Back to you, Tigran.
We have one more item in the agenda. Min, you added the limiter, memory limiter versus ballast, right? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I see you just put a comment there. So let me just give some background here. So for this one today, we can set up the ballast memory for the collector in the command line. So I think the motivation is saying that we don't want to have users to set the this kind of configuration in the command line. We want to move it into the YAML configuration file. That's why at the beginning we create this new extension called the Ballast Extension. So users, they can either set a absolute value for the ballast memory, or they can use a percentage, like what the percentage of the total memory the environment has to set up the ballast memory. Then I'm trying to and also this ballast extension or the memory limiter, or they are all the core components that we want to get it done before the GA. So I'm trying to pick up this ballast extension work. Then I found out that there's one thing there. So because this, if the users enable the ballast memory in the ballast extension, they also need to set the same value in the memory limiter, because the memory limiter, when the memory limiter calculate the memory, the collector has been limited. It needs to account this ballast memory, and and then it to decide if we need to drop the data or not. So which basically if the ballast value is enabled, these two components today need to have the same value on the ballast sides. So I don't know if someone who's sharing, can I share my screen? I want to show the latest comment there. I think.
Yeah. I mean, that would be helpful actually.
Yeah. Thank you. Let me share. Yeah, so there's a so what I'm trying to do here. So I still want to keep these two components, memory limiter and the ballast extension, but I add a validation in this PR saying, if the ballast extension had a ballast size set, the memory limiter should have the same size. Otherwise, the collector will be failed at the beginning. And I think Anurag yesterday, he put a comment, which I think is pretty good, is saying, if we want to have this validation, why we want to keep the ballast size memory in memory limiter, and instead of we just have one place to set this ballast size, then everywhere who want to use that value just get it from one places. I think it's a good idea. I want to make that change, but in the morning I think Tiguan, you added another comments here saying, why can we just combine these two components in one, right? Let's just move the ballast memory limit, setting into the memory limiter. I think that's probably not feasible, because the memory limiter is a processor, so it can be applied to different pipeline, for example, trace of metrics. So if we put this ballast memory allocation thing to the processor, it will duplicate the efforts, right? It will make the memory allocation to multiple times if they have multiple pipelines. So I probably, this is the first thing I want to discuss with you. Do you agree we cannot move this functionality into the memory limited processor? And the second question is, I think the one that I want to, so today in the memory limiter, we already have this ballast size. Can we remove this configuration and only use the ballast size configuration for the ballast extension, and the memory limiter gonna get the value from ballast extension for doing the logic in the process in the memory limiter processor? That's probably two questions I want to discuss here.
Yeah, so I only spent a couple of minutes thinking about this, so I may be wrong, but here's what I'm thinking. The memory limiter is, in practice, a required processor. If you're running anything other than a toy instance of a collector, you have to use it. So it is present virtually always, and logically it is coupled to the ballast value. The size of the ballast affects the operation of the memory limiter. It cannot work correctly unless it knows exactly what the ballast size is. So essentially, if you think about it, you can say that it's part of the same concept, right? Same functionality or very related functionality. we have separate components here, which is normally the way that we do things about, right? If we have separate concerns, you make them separate components. But here we're then coupling these two concerns, coupling the components, because they need to know about each other, about the configuration of each other. So I think it does make sense to, in a way, simplify this, right? Get rid of the notion of having two separate configurable components, then ensure that they are configured correctly by specifying the same value for the ballast in both places. And if it's incorrect, then that's a configuration error. Why we even need to do that, right? Let's put it in one place. Let's say that, you know what, ballast is actually inseparable part of the memory limiter's functionality, right? In a sense, it is the memory manager of the collector. It limits the memory and it creates a ballast which ensures that there is less garbage collections happening, which is the purpose of the ballast that we use. And then I think it does make sense, right? It makes the configuration simpler. As for how, because there may be multiple processors, I mean, we can easily have checks that verify that either all the processors use the same value for the ballast, right? If you have multiple processors and they are configured differently, then that is a configuration error. Or you use one of the values maybe, and obviously you will have to create a single ballast. But that's easily doable. That's not a problem, right? Whoever initializes the first creates the ballast. The rest just don't do that anymore. That's just very quick from the top of my head. Maybe there's something I'm missing here.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, I think you both. You also agree we should only maintain the ballast configuration in one places. But right now, I think the debatable the argument is, should we put it into the memory limiter, or we should just leave the keep the ballast extension and have the ballast extension as the only place to set that value, right? Like you propose, I don't know if I got it right. You're saying we should maintain that in the memory limiter and have multiple. If customer have multiple processor, we have another kind of validation logic, or either only pick up one, or we do the validation if users they have multiple processor config with different value. We are do the validation to detect it. I'm feeling this will make the things pretty complicated. I will still prefer to keep the ballast extension and remove and keep the ballast configuration in this extension as the only one places, and remove the ballast configuration for the memory limiter as I proposed here. I think this is much clearer though. So
I'm approaching this more from the user experience perspective. Let's set aside for a moment the implementation details. What's the easiest for the user? The user would want it to be in one place, right? Mm-hmm. And even if we set the value of the ballast in one place and the other component uses that value, we still have to configure two components instead of one. That is one additional step for the user to do. Is that necessary? It would be necessary if we think that there is a situation when you use only one of these components and not the other. And my hypothesis is that there is no such use case really. When you use the memory limiter, you do want a ballast. Then the default is 0 anyway, right?
Yeah.
And if you do use a ballast, then not using a memory limiter is kind of out of the question. Why is it that you care about performance, but you don't care that your process is going to crash with out of memory because you don't limit the size of the memory? To me, it seems like two sides of the same coin, right? From the user's perspective. When I want to configure this, I want to configure it once, and I don't want to bother with two different places in the config file.
So if we're thinking about this from a user's perspective, it is a bit awkward as a user to place a memory limiter as a pipeline stage.
Even that, I do agree with you. Yeah, I agree with you.
Right? It's
the design of the collector forced us to do that. But I agree with you. It would make more sense for the user to have a single memory limiter that affects all of the pipelines.
Well,
but we had to make it a problem.
So I'm not sure if I agree with that. So I think there are two different things here. One is, to me, again, the useful perspective I can contribute is that I have been with OpenTelemetry much less than most of the group here. So I have relatively fresh eyes. And to me, a memory limit seems like a characteristic of a pipeline, not a stage in a pipeline. So for example, I may say I have these 3 pipelines going on, and I want to reserve such amount of memory for pipeline 1 and a different amount of memory for pipeline 2. So maybe I do not want the same limit imposed on all my pipelines. However,
that's not how it works. That's a good perspective. That would be a nice to have feature, but that's not how it works. It actually limits the global memory of the process.
So if I had 2 different memory limiter processors defined and I put them into different processors, I put them into different pipelines, what would happen today?
You would have a very weird effects as a result of that. Most likely, the one that has the lowest limit set would be effective, and the rest would likely, if you had some overlapping regions, you may observe some very, very bad effects if you do that.
This sounds too exciting. All right, never mind.
Yeah.
Can we make the memory limiter a singleton? Like we can.
I mean, yes. Yeah. Logically, it should be a singleton. That's what I'm saying. And if it's a singleton, then the ballast also fits nicely there, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
That's the current functionality. Logically, it limits the global size of the process memory. I do agree with you, Punya. It would be even nicer if you could specify the amount of memory per pipeline, but that's not how it works, and there is no good way to make it work.
So given that that's not how it works, would it make sense to say if a memory limiter is configured globally, then it is applied to all pipelines? And you don't need to.
Are you suggesting that we implicitly insert memory limiter as a processor to all pipelines, even if you don't specify it as a processor in the pipeline?
I'm asking about the trade-off. Yes, so that's what I'm suggesting or asking about, because if we say let's collapse the memory limiter and the ballast to a single thing, then there's a single thing we're defining, and we have to reference it in each pipeline.
It's a possibility. Yeah, it's a possibility. There is one interesting use case where you actually have multiple pipelines, but do not set the memory limiter to all of those. Let's say I have a very important pipeline with very low volume of events flowing, and I have a chatty pipeline which can blow up my memory. I can set the memory limiter only to that chatty pipeline, which means that when the memory approaches the limit, it will start dropping from that particular pipeline, but it will never drop from my important pipeline, right? That's an interesting use case, which we do support today. It will work, right?
Got it.
So I don't know if we want to break that.
I think it's actually really worthwhile, if it's not already in the README for memory limiter, to include these things. These are really interesting design notes.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, the thing is, the memory limiter, it applies to different use cases, right? For example, if I want to apply memory limiter, I have 2 pipelines, matrix or trace. The memory limiter usually drops the data if it reaches some kind of memory limit, right? So let's say I only want to drop the data for my matrix pipeline. I don't want to drop it for my trace. Then the processor will be the use case. I only want to have it happen in one pipeline. But the ballast is a global thing. The ballast is regardless. It doesn't care of the pipeline. Is about the collector thing. So I'm kind of still struggling. I want to have these 2 components because they're for different use cases. So if we are going to only have one component, but this to work for these 2 test use cases, but they are really in some area they're in confliction of the their functionality is kind of conflicted. I cannot so I still worry about if we merge the ballast into memory limiter, they're going to make the things pretty complicated. Like we're trying to mix 2 different use cases or scenario into one component.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't insist that what I'm suggesting is right. I didn't even have enough time to think through it, but that's one possibility. Maybe let's think through it. Maybe we keep them separate. I don't know. But if we keep them separate, I think what you're suggesting does make a lot of sense, because it's bad experience today that you have to specify the same value in two places. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. So how can we move forward for this thing? Because I know we need to make a quick decision on these components. We want is a blocker, right? GA blocker is a core components.
Maybe let's give a bit time to think through this, because I literally just before this meeting had a look at this. Maybe give me a couple days and some other people a few days to think through this, and then we make a decision on this.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, T1. Thank you.
All right. Good. I think that was the last item in agenda. Does anybody else have anything else to talk about? Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.